Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I'm very happy to be back on YouTube. And first of all, my name is Maria Victoria Perez. I'm a teacher of English and also a neurolanguage coach, which means that I bring neuroscience, coaching, and teaching to this channel and to my services. So, first of all, welcome in and I'm very, very happy to be here. So, before I start, I would love to know where you are watching from, and also let me know how or what your level of English is. And as I give you some time to do that, I would like us to start with a new routine, which is we're bringing the neuroscience to the class, right? So I would like to start with mindful affirmations. We're going to pick one positive affirmation. The deck is from the company Intelligent Change, which I love. And the purpose here is to pick one card, read a positive statement so that we can connect to something positive. And by doing this, what we are doing is to bring positivity to the learning space. Why is that important? Because when we are in a positive state of mind, we are open to receive. We are open for or to see possibilities. And also, we expect positive outcomes, which in turn activates the dopamine circuitry that we have in the brain. And dopamine is very, very important when it comes to learning and thinking. The brain actually, or the number of connections that the brain makes, depends on the level of dopamine. So let's start with that. I'm going to choose one card and then I'm going to read it for all of you. The idea is to connect the messages to our learning process, okay? And one, like I said before, what we are doing is we are building a an optimal, or we are preparing the brain for an optimal learning state. So let's see, what do we have? Okay. Oh, I love this one. Let's see. It says, inside of me, there is an endless pool of peace, calmness, and harmony. Inside of me, there is an endless pool of peace, calmness, and harmony. What I love about this is that we need calmness in order to learn. We need peace. We need faith that we are doing the right thing. What do you think about this quote? How do you approach learning? Do you approach learning with a calm state of mind, or are you anxious? Do you fear exposing yourself, making mistakes? And also here we have, I love this combination of words, endless pool, so we can learn a little bit of vocabulary. Endless would be like interminable, fuente, piscina of peace. So we are peace. Basically, we have a lot of peace. We are an endless, or inside of me, there is an endless pool of peace, calmness, and harmony. So I hope you like it. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Okay, the topic of this video today has to do with learning English and how we can effectively learn English in the least amount of time, and also how to hack the brain in order to do it well. And this has to do with the power of repetition. Now, repetition is let me just grab my notes because I don't want to forget anything that is very important for our. Thank you for the like. Let me know where you're watching from. I would love to get to know you a little bit better. So, the power of repetition. Now, everyone wants to learn English really fast. The problem with wanting to learn English really, really fast is that sometimes we make mistakes along the way. We maybe become victims of our brain. And that's why we are going to bring neuroscience to this equation today in particular. Um, so, learning English fast is not that much, it's not possible. I mean, there's no magic formula. However, we, depending on what techniques that we use, we can learn English in the least amount of time and do it well. Because remember that here, what we need is to build a robust foundation. We need our knowledge to be robust. So by doing so, we can shorten the time. Now, repetition has its pros and its cons, and we're going to dive into them now in a minute. So the way we're going to do this, I am going to start with the why we should be embracing repetition, and then I'm gonna give you some examples of the activities that you can do. And finally, I'm going to give you um, some information on how you can hack the brain in order to do it well and not to become a victim of the brain. So let's get started with why repetition is crucial for learning English. So the first thing is that when we engage in repetition, we are strengthening our neural connections, which leads to better retention of vocabulary, grammar structures, and also language patterns. So these neural connections, yes, that we are strengthening when we engage in repetition, is what we are. It are what they are what will make us speak fluently. To know, I mean, just to think about what we want to communicate and not to think about the language. If you ever felt that you have to think a lot about what you want to say because you're thinking about the language and also the message, well, this is an example that probably you haven't built a robust foundation, and that repetition would be a great friend for you. So, when we strengthen these neural connections, we provoke we provoke more of autonomy, and also we are what we are doing basically is we are letting the subconscious take over. Yes. So it strengthens neural connections. It also improves fluency. Why are we improving fluency? Because regular practice through repetition builds muscle memory. And we know that the sounds in English are different from the sounds in Spanish. So if I have to be thinking all the time how to pronounce, for example, the sound d, then I'm not gonna be fluent. I need to rely on muscle memory. Which muscle memory? I'm going to say it in and with inverted commas because that's not the right term, but it's a more complex phenomenon or dynamic that happens. But let's call it for the time being muscle memory. So when we engage in repetition, we can become more fluent and also communicate in a more natural way. Another thing is that we can only learn so much from our current state of awareness. So when you revisit an exercise or read or reread a chapter, a book, or an article, or even you re-listen to an audio, you unlock new levels of understanding. You unlock new insights and those aha moments when you realize or say, oh, now I understand. Because we can only learn so much from our level of awareness. So, all in all, when we engage in a routine that prioritizes repetition, we accelerate learning. So, that's how we can learn English faster and effectively. Now, here's the thing, repetition might feel counterintuitive because the brain loves novelty. The brain, we talked about dopamine when we started the live. We said that dopamine um, is released when we are in a positive state of mind. But also, we release dopamine, or the circuitry is activated when there's something novel. The brain loves novelty, loves new things, and it releases dopamine. Dopamine is a reward system for the brain. So when we feel that, we want to do it. We are drawn to do that. And because the brain loves novelty, it makes us jump to the next new thing. It might be to the next new grammar point, to the next unit, to the next book, even to the next course. However, remember that that hit of dopamine, or that motivation that you might feel when you have that hit, is short lived. So you need to become very aware of this. And by knowing how the brain works, we can rise above it and be the one in control. So, revising familiar content is not going to feel natural. You are not going to be drawn to it. You might feel that it's a waste of time, that it is boring, because we are lacking that dopamine. So, by the end of the video, I'm going to tell you how to hack this part of the brain, what we can do to turn things upside down. Okay? So remember that when we are engaged in repetition, when we prioritize repetition, what we are actually doing is that we are building a robust foundation. We are strengthening the neural connections so that you can work with long-term memory. And also we are unlocking new levels of awareness. And remember that sometimes in order to go fast, we need to go slow. And I'm gonna say this again because, it's not very nice to hear, but sometimes in order to go fast, we need to go slow, intentionally slow. Okay? Well, let me know, how are you liking this? Do you have any questions about the why? And now in a minute, or in a couple of seconds, let me just drink something. Let me see if I have any comments. Um, okay, so now what I'm going to say is that, I'm going to give you some examples on what you can do to engage in this practice. And the first thing that I want to mention is this technique of spaced repetition. I love this technique. And basically, this method involves reviewing material at increasing intervals over time. because we want to focus on long-term memory here when we do so. And for example, let me give you an example. Let's say that, okay, this is the card, the affirmation that we used at the beginning, that we drew from the deck. So I want to memorize this affirmation, this sentence, because it's gonna give me vocabulary, it's gonna give me grammar, and also the message is very powerful. So the more I repeat it, the more it's going to become part of my subconscious and part of who I am, and I will be able to connect with this quality within myself. So, how can I memorize it? By engaging in spaced repetition. So, for example, now I can repeat it a couple of times. Maybe in an hour, I can come back and see how much I remember. Then tomorrow, I can come back, see how much I remember. And then maybe in 2 days, I can come back, or in 3 days. And also, like I said before, the more I come back to it, the more things the more things I'm gonna see. So maybe one day I will just memorize the phrase, but then another day I can say, okay, but here we have endless pool or endless. So we have a suffix here, less, to add it to the word end. So, this is how we are unlocking new levels of awareness by engaging in repetition. But the space training practice leverages these intervals. So when we are not repeating, when we are not coming back to the material, we are leaving the brain rest. We are leaving the brain, or allowing the brain to rest and do the work for us, and then we can come back with more conscious energy. So it optimizes learning by reinforcing weaker memories. So remember at the beginning that I said that we want to strengthen our neural connections. Well, this is what spaced repetition does. Now, probably the downside of this is that it requires planning and organizing. Exercise that you can do for this space training or this space repetition, you can do listening and repetition or shadowing. What this means is that you're going to listen to a piece of an audio, a line, a couple of lines, and then you're going to repeat after the speaker. You can mimic the intonation, you can mimic the pronunciation. So you can improve your pronunciation, you can improve your listening skills, you can retain vocabulary, you can retain language patterns. Okay, this is very, very important. And in my opinion, what really works wonders, I love how this works. And at least every brain is different, but for my brain and for most of my students, when we are listening and reading at the same time, that's really helpful and powerful, because my brain needs to recognize the word as well, the written word. So try that one. Another exercise that you can do is reading. Yes, whenever you have or you are reading an article, or maybe a book, a chapter, come back to this content. And here, what you're going to do is to learn a lot of new words in context, which is the most important thing, because sometimes we know the definition of the word, but we don't know how to use it in context. Okay. You can even memorize lines. That's very, very powerful as well. Memorizing lines Can be like we did before with the affirmation. You can also memorize lines when you're doing the speaking, sorry, not the speaking, the listening and the reading. And finally, the other technique that you can use to do repetition and to foster, to encourage memorizing and long-term memory is utilizing or using flashcards. So let me sip a little bit of my tea. Basically, what you do here in a flashcard, in a piece of paper, you can write a word, an idiomatic expression, and on the other side, the definition. So you can be revisiting and testing this new vocabulary pretty much anywhere because they are very convenient to bring with you everywhere. So, like I said before, in summary, adding different types of repetition to your English learning routine offers many benefits, from improved retention and fluency to enhanced cognitive abilities. But here's the kicker: as I mentioned before, the brain loves novelty because of this dopamine hit that we have. So it may, or I would say it will, show resistance to this practice. You won't want to do it. And that's because the brain wants that dopamine kick. Now, how are you going to recognize this? So, for example, if you hear your inner voice say, I already know this. So let's say that you want to go back to a book that you're reading. It's, oh, I already read that. I already know what it is about. Why should I bother? It's boring. Okay, if you hear your inner voice saying that, it's because the brain is showing that resistance. Now, what can you do? So the secret here is to, again, connect to a positive state of mind. We want to bring the brain, we want to create the optimal learning state for the brain. And that means having a positive state of mind, being open. And by doing so, we are going to allow and also unlock new levels of understandings, new levels of awareness. So when you approach an activity with an open mind, you can also remind yourself of all your you can also remind yourself of the benefits of repetition so that you can change the perspective. And how are you going to intentionally create this positivity in your brain? By asking this question. So you're going to intentionally bring this element of novelty to the process of repetition by asking this question: what new thing can I learn from this today? And I'm going to repeat the question one more time. What new thing am I going to learn from this today? I'm going to type it in the chat. So, what new thing can I learn from this today? So, it might be the right pronunciation of a word. It might be that you remember a new word or an idiomatic expression. It might be that you finally deeply understand the use of a grammar structure. So remember that there is always something new that you can find, that you can discover in an authentic piece of English, in an authentic piece of the English language. And when we are looking for that new thing, we are spiking the dopamine. And remember that this is a great attitude for life as well. This skill that I'm telling you right now is a great attitude for life as well. What new thing can I learn from this today? So, my powerful question for you is how can you include more repetition in your study routine? How can you include more repetition in your study routine? That's some um, food for thought. I want you to think about it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you like repetition? Um, do you find can you recognize, can you feel that you are into new things, that the brain loves that novelty and hates repetition? Well, in the repetition, yes, you will find an effective study practice, okay? Because we want to build those strong neural connections. We want to build that robust foundation in order to be able to speak fluently. And remember, we're going to end this live with revising our um, affirmation. Inside of me, there is an endless pool of peace, calmness, and harmony. All right, well, I will leave you at that. And let me know. I want to get to know you a little bit better. How did you like this? And see you in the next one. Bye bye.